Hello everyone, I'm Cheryl Fritz of Apricity, co-chair of the 2020 Women's Fun Events Committee.
And I'm Stacy Haslett-Ropey of CAP Services, co-chair of the 2020 Women's Fun Luncheon Committee. What a year to be co-chairs! Thank you to the entire events committee for your creativity as we made the pivot to this virtual luncheon. We are grateful to all of you. As many of you know, this is the 20th annual Women's Fun Luncheon, and it's the 25th anniversary of the creation of the Women's Fund. So we had big plans to celebrate with all of you in person today.
But COVID is bigger than all of us, so we thank you for joining us today virtually to be part of another amazing event to support the needs and celebrate the talents of local women and girls. The work of the Women's Fund would not be possible without the generous support of this year's Women's Fund Luncheon sponsors.
Thank you to Community First Credit Union for their 20 years of supporting this luncheon as our presenting sponsor. Your support and dedication to the Women's Fund is so much appreciated. Also, thank you to US Venture for, once again, being our speaker sponsor and all you do to elevate women and girls in our community. There are so many more sponsors to thank, which you will see here as we count down to the luncheon.
This year, in honor of the 20th luncheon, we are auctioning 20 designer handbags, and in each of those handbags, this is a surprise for you. A gift card or cards to local businesses that were purchased by supporters of the Women's Fund. This is our small way to support the businesses that have been so generous to the Women's Fund and all of the nonprofits in our community. Text WF Luncheon to 76278 to start the bidding.
We are so glad that you're here. Grab your lunch, sit back, and get ready for the luncheon of a lifetime, as now more than ever, women and girls in the Fox Valley need your support.
Hello everyone, I'm Cheryl Fritz of Apricity, co-chair of the 2020 Women's Fun Events Committee.
And I'm Stacy Hazlitt-Ropey of CAP Services, co-chair of the 2020 Women's Fun Luncheon Committee. What a year to be co-chairs! Thank you to the entire events committee for your creativity as we made the pivot to this virtual luncheon. We are grateful to all of you. As many of you know, this is the 20th annual Women's Fun Luncheon, and it's the 25th anniversary of the creation of the Women's Fund. So we had big plans to celebrate with all of you in person today.
But COVID is bigger than all of us, so we thank you for joining us today virtually to be part of another amazing event to support the needs and celebrate the talents of local women and girls. The work of the Women's Fund would not be possible without the generous support of this year's Women's Fund Luncheon sponsors.
Thank you to Community First Credit Union for their 20 years of supporting this luncheon as our presenting sponsor. Your support and dedication to the Women's Fund is so much appreciated. Also, thank you to US Venture for, once again, being our speaker sponsor and all you do to elevate women and girls in our community. There are so many more sponsors to thank, which you will see here as we count down to the luncheon.
This year, in honor of the 20th luncheon, we are auctioning 20 designer handbags, and in each of those handbags, this is a surprise for you. A gift card or cards to local businesses that were purchased by supporters of the Women's Fund. This is our small way to support the businesses that have been so generous to the Women's Fund and all of the nonprofits in our community. Text WF Luncheon to 76278 to start the bidding.
We are so glad that you're here. Grab your lunch, sit back, and get ready for the luncheon of a lifetime, as now more than ever, women and girls in the Fox Valley need your support.
everyone. I'm Cheryl Fritz of Apricity, co-chair of the 2020 Women's Fun Events Committee.
And I'm Stacy Hazlitt-Ropey of CAP Services, co-chair of the 2020 Women's Fun Luncheon Committee. What a year to be co-chairs! Thank you to the entire events committee for your creativity as we made the pivot to this virtual luncheon. We are grateful to all of you. As many of you know, this is the 20th annual Women's Fun Luncheon, and it's the 25th anniversary of the creation of the Women's Fund. So we had big plans to celebrate with all of you in person today.
But COVID is bigger than all of us, so we thank you for joining us today virtually to be part of another amazing event to support the needs and celebrate the talents of local women and girls. The work of the Women's Fund would not be possible without the generous support of this year's Women's Fund Luncheon sponsors.
Thank you to Community First Credit Union for their 20 years of supporting this luncheon as our presenting sponsor. Your support and dedication to the Women's Fund is so much appreciated. Also, thank you to US Venture for, once again, being our speaker sponsor and all you do to elevate women and girls in our community. There are so many more sponsors to thank, which you will see here as we count down to the luncheon.
This year, in honor of the 20th luncheon, we are auctioning 20 designer handbags, and in each of those handbags, this is a surprise for you. A gift card or cards to local businesses that were purchased by supporters of the Women's Fund. This is our small way to support the businesses that have been so generous to the Women's Fund and all of the nonprofits in our community. Text WF Luncheon to 76278 to start the bidding.
We are so glad that you're here. Grab your lunch and get ready for the luncheon of a lifetime, as now more than ever, women and girls in the Fox Valley need your support.
We are family, brothers and our sisters and me. We are family, get up everybody and sing. We are family, brothers and our sisters and me. We are family, get up everybody and sing. We walk on by, and we flock just like birds of a feather. I won't tell no lie. Oh, all of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me say for the record, we're giving love in a family goes. We are family, brothers and our sisters and me. We are family, get up everybody and sing. We are family, brothers and our sisters and me. We are family, get up everybody and sing. Living life is fun and we'll just be done. I hope we have for the future and our goals inside. our family.
Hello, everyone. We are family. I hope you had a chance to get up and sing. I'm Lisa Malik, co-host of Local 5 Live on WFRV Channel 5, and I'm so excited to be your mistress of ceremonies once again, this for the 7th year. Thank you to New Voices for that amazing opening. Since we are family, we're not going to let the pandemic get in the way of our 20th annual Women's Fund Luncheon. You heard that right, 20th annual. And the song you just heard by New Voices opened this luncheon 20 years ago, and for many of the luncheons that followed. Thank you all for joining us today, no matter where you are. We are so grateful you're spending this time with us. A fun fact, we have 23 states represented this year. That's pretty amazing. From the East Coast to the West Coast, the response to this virtual luncheon has been overwhelming. So no matter where you are, what time zone you're in, we hope you enjoy this special program.
And welcome. I'm Julie Keller, Executive Director of the Women's Fund, and I too want to thank you for being part of this special event. Wow, what a great turnout. We are so glad you're here. And we are live streaming from Image Studios in Appleton. A shout out to the entire team here. We have a group in front of us right now making all this possible, and we can't wait to celebrate with all of you virtually today.
That's right, we have a lot to celebrate. Not only is it the 20th annual Women's Fund Luncheon, but it's the 25th anniversary of the Women's Fund. And 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. So we do have a lot to celebrate.
And to our sponsors, can I just say how grateful I am to every one of you for stepping up and saying yes to women and girls. We had sponsors increase their level of support this year, and new ones join us. Thank you all for your amazing generosity. Our presenting sponsor for 20 years, Community First Credit Union. Our speaker sponsor, U.S. Venture. Sustaining sponsor, Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region. Lead sponsors, Ascension, Associated Bank, Integrity Insurance, Lisa Germain, Kimberly Clark, Merrill Lynch, Dr. Sandra Mills Foundation, Students Forward, Mosaic Family Health, Plexus, Secura Insurance Companies, and our corporate sponsors, Amcor, The Bolt Company, Fox Valley Technical College, Legacy Private Trust Company, Theta Care. And to all of our many contributing sponsors shown here on the screen, please recognize all these organizations and individuals who value the importance of investing in women and girls. And thank you also to the in-kind sponsors and to everyone who donated handbags for our silent auction and purchased gift cards to local businesses to go into those handbags. We are grateful to you all. And we reimagined our traditional reserve tables this year, and we had virtually together tables, so all of you out there who gathered with friends and families and colleagues before our event, thank you. We hope that all worked out for you and you enjoyed your time together virtually or at a safe social distance.
We are all here to support the needs of women and girls in our community. And as most of us know, the needs are greater than ever. Women are on the front line of this pandemic, and women have been hit hard with job losses. So today we're going to be asking for your support. There are no raffle tickets this year, but there are 20 designer handbags for you to bid on. Inside of those handbags are gift certificates to local businesses. This year, in an effort to support those local businesses who support so many nonprofits, supporters of the Women's Fund purchased gift certificates to be included in the handbags. We aren't telling you what certificates are in each bag, but there are at least 3 with a total value of $80. In addition, one of the handbags will have a necklace donated by our good friends at Avenue Jewelers. So one lucky winner will find a bit of an extra surprise in their handbag. Go to this website or text to get in on the fund and support the Women's Fund and local businesses. We have a really great program lined up for you today. I hope you're all enjoying your lunch that you got to choose this year. Today you will hear from our inspiring keynote speaker and Appleton native, Joanna Garten, about her new book, Edge of the Map. It's about another Appleton native, Christine Boskoff. We'll hear also from 4 women who have been leading our community through this pandemic. We'll take the time as well to honor the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the constitutional right to vote. And you will hear about the impact that all of you make by attending this luncheon, by supporting the work and the mission of the Women's Fund.
We hope today you will be inspired to join the Women's Fund family and make a gift that is meaningful to you. Here are the many ways you can do that. It's quick and it's easy, and by all of us coming together, we can have a greater impact. Many of you made a donation when you registered for the event. Thank you. For those that give at least $100 by 12/15 today, you will be entered into a drawing for a designer purse package, which we will draw at the end of our luncheon today. And this package includes a Michael Kors purse, a Sangria's gift card, a necklace from Medici, 2 Yeti wine tumblers, and of course a bottle of wine to go with that, and a copy of the book Edge of the Map, all valued at over $500. So lots of good stuff on top of this beautiful purse, so get your donation in. It's quick and it's easy. And everyone who makes a gift of $100 or more will be recognized in the Women's Fund October email newsletter.
Well, speaking of drawings, everyone registered was entered for a virtual door prize drawing. It's a signed copy of our keynote speaker's book, Edge of the Map, and we're going to announce the winners throughout our program today. Congratulations. Should we do a drum roll here?
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Our first winner is Christopher Stratton. Congratulations, Christopher. We will contact you to get that prize in your hands. Well, I am now pleased to introduce our honorary co-chairs for this special luncheon. They are 2 amazing women in our community many of you know, Kathy Seifert and Kathy Tierney. Kathy Seifert was one of our first speakers at the very first Women's Fund Luncheon 20 years ago. And Kathy Tierney and Community First Credit Union have been the presenting sponsor of the Women's Fund Luncheon for all 20 years.
Hello everyone, I'm Kathy Seifert and welcome to the 20th Annual Women's Fund Luncheon and the first virtual luncheon ever.
And I'm Kathy Tierney. Community First Credit Union is honored to be the presenting sponsor for the 20th year.
We are thrilled to be the honorary co-chairs for this special Women's Fund Luncheon, and we appreciate all of you being here. It's hard to believe that 20 years ago we had our first luncheon on September 6, 2001, where I had the honor to be one of your first speakers. We may not have known it at the time, but we were onto something pretty big. The very first year we had nearly 800 in attendance and raised just over $28,000, but we were just getting started. Since then, we've met every year on the Thursday following Labor Day to celebrate the women in our community and the great impact we are all making together through the support of the Women's Fund. Over 19 years, this luncheon has raised $2.3 million with total attendance of over 18,000 women and a few good men. This has supported growth in endowed assets from $108,000 25 years ago to over $2.4 million today. And on top of that, $1.7 million has provided safety, confidence building, economic security, education, and more to support women and girls in the greater Fox Valley.
Along the way, we've been touched by the many women who have graced the stage, including my good friend Kathy. They have made us laugh and cry and inspired us all. When our hearts connect, laughter bubbles and tears flow. We share, we learn, we grow, and together we make a difference. It's the mystery and the miracle that we as women bring to the world, and your support makes the work of the Women's Fund possible. Community First Credit Union has been the presenting sponsor every year because we know how important it is to elevate women and girls. They strengthen families and our community. Like Community First, women find a way. Not only is this the 20th Women's Fund Luncheon, we're celebrating 25 years since the founding of the Women's Fund. To mark this milestone, I'm pleased to announce that Community First is thrilled to match the donations you make today up to $25,000. We want to challenge you, all our community supporters, to make a generous gift in honor of the 25th anniversary. Community First has a fund within the Women's Fund that supports annual grant making. In fact, we established the first corporate fund, and Kathy and her daughter Erin opened one of the very first individual funds. We encourage others to do the same. Establish a fund, or if you already have one, continue to grow it each year.
A $25,000 match? Kathy and Community First, thank you. Thank you so very much for leading the way and being such a generous supporter of our community. And today is a fantastic opportunity for all of us to step up and double our contributions to the Women's Fund when we make our own personal gifts. We are grateful to all of you for joining us and are honored to be part of this special day. With your support, the Women's Fund will continue to do great things to elevate all women and girls in our community.
Thank you, Kathy and Kathy. Wow, Julie, $25,000. That is incredible. You don't want to miss out on the opportunity to double your impact. Maybe take a moment, put down your food or drink, pick up your pen, or get ready to click and make a donation now. You will see on the screen how you can donate either online or how to mail a check to the Women's Fund.
We are deeply honored by this generous gift. Thank you, Kathy and Community First Credit Union. All of your support makes a positive impact on women and girls in the Fox Valley, and the Women's Fund is proud to be the leader in this effort for our community. During this last year, together with all of you, we invested $150,000 in programs and initiatives to benefit women and girls. $150,000 to bring our total investment to over $1.7 million. This was possible because of your support and belief that investing in women and girls is critical to the future of us all. Your support resulted in grants to organizations working on the front lines addressing the greatest needs of women and girls. Scholarships and tuition assistance so young women have opportunities to continue their education. The chance for high school girls to invest in programs that will best meet the needs of their peers to be successful through the Girls Grant-Making Project. Support to young moms and young women to pursue a post-secondary education to lift themselves and their families out of poverty. And mentorship and leadership opportunities for women and girls to have a greater voice in shaping our future. Together, we are creating a community where women and girls can do more than meet their basic needs. We are creating a community where women and girls can achieve long-term economic opportunities for themselves and their families. This pandemic has brought to light many disparities that negatively impact women, but now we have an opportunity to not just recover, but rebuild to even better than we were before. By joining us today, you are making this possible.
You know, each year before the luncheon, we have an issue spotlight. It's a conversation about topics important for women and girls. This year, we're going to share some of that issue spotlight with you as part of our luncheon program. A couple of weeks ago, I had the honor of moderating a panel of 4 amazing women who are leading our community through the crisis in each of their sectors. Today, we'll see a small portion of the panel discussion, and I invite you to go to the Women's Fund website for a link to the entire conversation. Think back, everyone, to January 1st, 2020. What were we talking about? 2020 is perfect vision, a new decade, new opportunities, a fresh start, optimism of the great year we were about to embark upon. Who could imagine back in January where we would be today and for most of the year? Shutting down schools, non-essential businesses, the medical community bracing for the worst. So today we're fortunate to have 4 amazing women who are leading the way in our community's response, recovery, and rebuilding in the areas of K-12 education, healthcare, business, and philanthropy. With me today, Judy Baseman, Superintendent, Appleton Area School District. Monica Hilt, Hospital President, Ascension Fox Valley and Stevens Point Hospital. Becky Bartosik, President and CEO, Fox Cities Chamber of Commerce. Tammy Geenan, Vice President of Community Engagement, Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region. I know how extremely busy these ladies all are, so we want to thank them for being part of this conversation and this special Women's Fund virtual luncheon. All right, to get the conversation started, we're going to have each woman give us a brief update on what is currently happening in their sector as it relates to the COVID pandemic.
For us in the healthcare setting right now, we really are kind of in a place where we have our one foot in each camp. We've been able to reopen our services and begin to provide care for individuals who have urgent and non-urgent care now that we're through the initial phase of the COVID pandemic hitting our community. But we also have to be very prepared to take on additional patients if we see a surge in our community in the number of COVID positive patients. And so that really is kind of a daily exercise for us. And we're, taking a look at the data in terms of the community overall, as well as anticipating what the needs might be.
From the business sector, I think many businesses are just reinventing themselves and trying to figure out from an HR perspective how they get back to the new normal. So for many workplaces, they're exploring work at home options versus bringing everybody back and trying to navigate the still uncertain waters.
As things were beginning to shut down in March, giving in the community was something that began to ramp up. So we had an opportunity as a community and a community foundation to provide a way for people who wanted to help to be able to channel that charitable giving spirit in a way that could make an immediate difference as the needs were starting to emerge in the community about how to help people that were struggling during the crisis.
And I would agree, for us in K-12 education, really important to capitalize on the partnerships around us in our community, whether it was providing meals to our students during the when schools were closed by governor's order. Last spring, we had to step up very quickly to make sure that kids had what they needed and families had what they needed. Most districts have had to come up with a couple of different plans because we know that as conditions in our community change, we have to be ready to flow between face-to-face models and virtual models. So to be flexible and responsive to the conditions in the community.
So let's talk a little bit about how you all made decisions given the uncertainty of the situation, and for the most part, because there were no best options.
It was interesting at the Chamber of Commerce because that was actually one of the easy parts for us. Our entity is 147 years old and we were created for this moment. So it was very clear that we needed to lock arms with all of our partners and save as many businesses as possible and be a calm voice of reason and help the community wade through all of the misinformation that was out there. So it was somewhat easy just because the path was very clear based on the mission of the organization.
We were together learning as we went. There is no playbook for how to respond in this type of pandemic that any of us have ever experienced. So we were doing a lot of listening and trying to understand from the nonprofit sector, what are you seeing, what are you experiencing, so that from the philanthropic side, we could respond appropriately.
I think, that's an incredible point because I know one of the things that we experienced early on was the incredible generosity of our community, both in terms of individuals and businesses and foundations really wanting to jump in and figure out a way that they could help support the healthcare providers and other individuals in need in the community. We are so blessed in this community by the generosity.
As far as decision making, we did have a pandemic plan in place in the Appleton Area School District from probably about 10 years ago when the H1N1 situation occurred. And so it's very clear in our plan that our city health officer, Kurt Egebrecht, would be our point person in terms of helping us work through the decision making depending on the conditions in the community. And he has been a tremendous resource for us, as has our nursing department. And so those decisions that we have had to make in terms of safety guidelines to be ready to reopen, it's been in close collaboration with our health partners. So those partnerships, again, you're hearing that common theme, I think, for all of us.
All right, let's talk a little bit about a positive now. What's been a positive for your sector as the result of the pandemic, and how do you envision the new normal?
I think for us, it has fast forward our staff and us as an organization to do more with technology, just in terms of engaging kids. It's really pushed us forward in terms of our long-range technology integration plan. We have now been fast forwarded into being able to do that at a much higher level, and our staff have really stepped forward to learn the best practices related to virtual learning. So that has moved us forward and will continue to move us forward.
As we were creating the COVID-19 Community Response Fund with United Way and trying to then determine, okay, how do we collaborate virtually? but also from a process perspective, how can we quickly and rapidly deploy dollars out into the community. So it's really been a silver lining, a COVID silver lining, which has helped us to reimagine how can we work more efficiently. And as a result, in a 4-month period, we're able to fundraise to have $1.5 million come into the COVID-19 Community Response Fund.
I think, we're trying to capture that agile movement in our organization, or, in terms of planning forward. And so when we had to do it in response to the pandemic, we're trying to, continue to be able to move quickly and make changes that will help serve patients and care for patients better. So we're trying to hold on to that in other situations.
I think that Judy's terms of fast forward are spot on for the business sector. I think that the business sector in general was adopting the new technology, whether it was Zoom meetings or new platforms where people were able to work remotely. And it just fast forwarded the entire business sector in that direction.
All right. Well, I want to thank all 4 of you so much for spending time with us today. I think if one thing is clear, we have a lot of superior leaders here in our area. And so we thank them for their leadership. We thank them for their optimism for the future. And I think if there's one thing we have all learned, it's that we can all use a little bit of grace as we move through the pandemic. Thank you so much to the panelists. To see the entire discussion, visit the Women's Fund website early next week. You definitely want to hear the whole conversation. Really left us with a sense of hope at the end. We are fortunate to have these amazing leaders in our community. Let's announce another virtual door prize winner. Everybody who registered was entered into a drawing for a signed copy of our keynote speaker's book, Edge of the Map. Julie's holding it now, makes you want to wander. Our next winner is Susan McDermott. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Susan. We will get information about how you can get your book.
Another important milestone this year is the ratification of the 19th Amendment granting women the right to vote. On August 26, 1920, American women were granted the constitutional right to vote, a major victory for the women's suffrage movement. But the 19th Amendment did not treat all women equally. It excluded Native American women and Asian American women who were not considered citizens. Black women also couldn't exercise their right to vote. It wasn't until 1965, 45 years later, that the passage of the Voting Rights Act prohibited racial discrimination in voting. The Fox Valley 19th Amendment Centennial Celebration Coalition is a collaborative group of women from women-run associations, organizations, and clubs, all aligned in our desire to celebrate, educate, and advocate for women's rights. The Women's Fund is proud to be a member of this coalition and work with this amazing group of organizations and women. Others who are part of this coalition include the League of Women Voters of Appleton, Northeast Wisconsin Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, American Association of University Women Appleton, Midday Women's Alliance, and more. There's an active speakers bureau, a traveling exhibit titled We Stand on Their Shoulders, developed by the Wisconsin Historical Society, which is available for display at locations throughout the Fox Valley. And educational toolkits have been distributed to local schools and are available online. All of this information and more is on the website, Her Voice, Her Vote, OurVictory.com. I encourage all of you to become involved to mark this very important milestone.
That is amazing work. And thank you to all the members of the coalition for all you're doing to raise awareness and educate our community throughout this year. It is now time to hear from our keynote speaker. I'm pleased to introduce a representative of this year's speaker sponsor, Michelle Nevins of US Venture, to introduce our speaker.
Venture is thrilled to be the speaker sponsor for this amazing event again this year. I'm Michelle Nevins, Division Vice President of Finance for US Venture, and I'm excited to represent our company today. For more than 65 years, US Venture has been recognized as an innovative leader in the distribution of petroleum and renewable energy products, lubricants, tires and parts, and using data-driven insights to manage energy and information in the global movement of goods. But here in our community, we are equally well known for our strategic foresight, caring relationships, and leading change. We are all here today to support the Women's Fund and its mission to invest in the unique needs of women and girls in our community and inspire females to thrive personally, economically, and professionally. At US Venture, we know that investing in women is critical to our future success. In 2019, She Ventures Networking Group was born with a mission to create a community of women within US Venture that are committed to supporting one another's pursuit of excellence and joy, both professionally and personally. We know how important it is to connect women across the organization, and this group provides opportunities for friendship, knowledge, and support, in addition to helping our women team members be the best they can be in all aspects of their busy lives. Today, we have over 150 women participating in She Ventures, and I am proud to chair this group of phenomenal women. Most of us crave more connection, balance, and personal growth, and it's our duty to help the women in our community continue to grow and stay inspired. And like the mission of the Women's Fund, we believe that the full participation of women and girls is the key to a strong, equitable, and sustainable community. That's why we are all here today, to support the women and girls in our community. It's my privilege to introduce you to our speaker today. Joanna Garten wears many hats. She's an author, journalist, mother, and cross-country coach, originally from Appleton. Joanna's newly released book, Edge of the Map, tells the story of Christine Boskoff, another Appleton native who broke barriers and climbed to the height of success. Joanna will inspire you with messages of resiliency, human endurance, and the importance of legacy, and I couldn't be more excited to hear from her today. Let's all give a virtual warm welcome to Joanna.
A lot of people, they look at me and they're like, you're crazy. I would never go up there. It's dangerous. The physical and mental challenge of the sport, of trying to push yourself as far as you can go to achieve the summit.
Considered one of the top female high-altitude mountain climbers in the world, Christine Boskoff has tackled more summits than any woman alive. Her partner, Charlie Fowler, is among the best-known mountaineers in the United States.
They were great partners. And that lifestyle that they were in, your partner is really meaningful.
Summit or die. It's a famous quote from the Japanese, and you might have to.
Our last camp before the summit.
Both set out for the treacherous border region between Nepal and southwest China in October. They were last heard from on November 9th.
Rescuers in China's Sichuan province have said that they have located the body of one of two American mountain climbers.
What she had was an incredible love of the mountains. Chris, she wanted to touch them. She wanted to be on them. She wanted to be absorbed in them. Needed to be in that environment, like up close and personal, on rocks, on glaciers, around crevasses, everything. Just insatiable desire to be part of those mountains.
The thing that really intrigues me about climbing is not only the venture of the excitement and the danger of climbing, but it's also going into a different land and seeing the people and experiencing their culture.
Charlie was an inspiration to a ton of people.
He was one of the greatest climbers in the world. He's climbed more things, done more first descents. He was technically just awesome. But he wasn't cocky, he wasn't, his motto was the more the merrier. We would take people climbing with us. It didn't make any difference if you've ever climbed a day in your life.
His stories, if you could get him to start telling stories, they were amazing, and the things he's done in his life.
Chris was the first woman I saw Charlie spend time with that was on par with him in terms of athletics, climbing ability, and just sheer sense of adventure. You don't get that opportunity to be close to exceptional people like that.
But she loved that climbing, From the very top of Mount Everest, from our solar telephone, she called, "Mom, I made it and I'm on top of the world." And that's where she was, and she was so happy.
She wanted to pick up Mountain Madness from Scott Fisher, who had died during the 1996 Everest disaster and run it as a business that could be profitable enough in order to help her in getting out and climbing all over the world. She was successful in that. She'd climbed a number of the big 8,000 meter peaks. That should have given her great brand recognition, but she was a very, very humble person.
Chris and Charlie were always looking for something new. I mean, once Chris chose to no longer pursue the big 8,000 meter peaks, I think her focus changed to going sort of after the uncharted climbs. Technically, the climbing is harder, so it's just a different game, and I think it's more true to the spirit of climbing.
We were expecting Chris back on December the 7th, but the plane arrived and she didn't.
And Damon called me and said, Charlie and Chris didn't make the flight. And that's kind of when we sort of went into action.
We weren't exactly sure where they were.
Nobody knew. Nobody knew, and it was a real hunt.
Thank you to the Women's Fund for hosting this unique and celebratory event and inviting me to join you today. I'm Joanna Garten, and it's such an honor to be back in my hometown to speak at this, the most meaningful event of the year for women and girls in our community. It's especially joyful to be with you as we celebrate so many milestones. The recent 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the Women's Fund, and the 20th anniversary of your first luncheon. The fact that you're welcoming a hometown girl to speak here today about the life of another hometown girl is a magnificent tribute to the dedication the Women's Fund has to not only growing women who will remain in our community, but indeed supporting them wherever they journey beyond the Fox Cities, including, in Christine Boskoff's case, to the top of Mount Everest. There's much to share with you today about Chris's life and legacy, but I'd like to take a moment to speak about my ties to the Women's Fund and the power of women in the Fox Valley. I grew up on College Avenue in Appleton, just 2 blocks away from Lawrence. I spent my days at Conkey's bookstore, at Jerry's Pipe Shop, buying magazines and candy bars, and visiting the newly opened Fox River Mall. I went to Edison Elementary, Roosevelt, and Appleton East in the time when there was only West and East. Christine Boskoff also went to East, but she was 3 years older than me, and we never crossed paths. I graduated, went to college, moved to Asia for a few years, and when I got back, I landed in Chicago in law school. It was the mid-1990s, and I remember talking with my mom about a wild idea she and some friends were discussing: a fund for women and girls in the Fox Valley. It would live in the Community Foundation and be established with a pool of money from a group of founding donors. As I looked over that list of donors recently, I was struck by how many names I recognized: neighbors and family friends, all of them individuals who had a vision that our community could do more to advance women and girls in the Fox Valley region. My mother went on to become the first executive director of the Women's Fund, and I'm certain it was the most meaningful job of her long career. Aside from her desire to lift up women and girls, Mom was a storyteller. She published one book in those early years of the Women's Fund, and maybe, just maybe, she had one more in her if she could find the right topic. In 2006, she fell over a Post-Crescent article about Chris's disappearance in Western China. Not having any idea who Chris was, Mom began asking questions, inspired by the magnitude of Chris's accomplishments and the fact that she was such an unsung hero. Christine Boskoff had 3 older brothers and worked hard to keep up with them. She joined in their games of tackle football on the weekends and bested them at tennis and downhill skiing, which she mastered at Nordic Mountain. As childhoods go here in the Fox Valley, hers was pretty typical, and I know many of you here today watched her grow up. Some of you worked with her at Rich's Bakery. Some of you remember her from sitting in the pews at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church.
And some of you remember her learning how to fly after attending EAA one summer during college. She returned from that event and told her friend Naomi, "I want to learn how to fly." And so she did. Before she graduated college, she was flying and took her mom, Joyce, up on a Mother's Day flight over the Fox Valley. When she graduated from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee with a degree in engineering, Chris got a job at Lockheed in Atlanta, where she worked on designing software for the control display of military cargo planes. It was here in Atlanta that she fell in love with the sport of mountaineering. She learned that she had a unique ability to adapt to high altitude, and before long, she was climbing the highest mountains in the world. There are 14 peaks in the world, which are over 8,000 meters, and eventually Chris would climb 6 of those. In the year 2000, when she climbed her 6th, it was a record for an American woman. Today, 20 years later, that record stands. No other American woman has been on top of as many 8,000-meter peaks as the girl from right here in the Fox Valley. What makes Chris's story so beautiful and worth telling was how absolutely true she stayed to who she was and where she came from. No matter where she went in the world, she forever had a love for Pabst Blue Ribbon and the Green Bay Packers. One of my favorite Chris stories came from one of her clients, a guy she led on an expedition. As they climbed higher and higher, he described how the team members began gasping, finding it harder and harder to breathe at altitude. And he said, there we were all very serious about every step, and Chris was just bouncing along on the trail, not struggling at all. She got to our camp, set up our dining area, and welcomed us with a smile. She had snacks all laid out, and what I remember more than anything was that she had carried every morsel all the way up the mountain. And she was so proud because she had brought the absolute finest cheese. She was just so focused on the quality of that cheese. Beyond excelling at the sport of mountaineering, Chris was also blazing trails as the only woman to own an adventure guiding company. She and her husband, Keith, had bought Mountain Madness to support them and foster their love of the outdoors. When she lost Keith and was left a widow at age 31, she ran the company on her own while continuing to summit peaks all over the world. Through it all, she remained humble about her achievements. When she was out on training hikes with friends, she was rarely recognized, and when strangers asked her what she did for a living, she always laughed and said, "Oh, I just run a travel company." Ultimately, Chris was interested in pursuing her passions, not because she was breaking barriers as a woman, but simply because she felt blessed to have found something she loved. By 2006, the logistics of big expeditions no longer thrilled Chris as they once did. Instead, she and her climbing partner, Charlie Fowler, found enjoyment in traveling to unknown parts of the world. She'd bumble along, trying to communicate in a language she didn't speak, shop in local markets, a smiling American woman with blonde hair and a sea of people staring at her. In the fall of that year, Chris and Charlie went deep into the mountains of Western China to a mountain valley rarely seen by Westerners. The pictures and videos of her last days show the sparkle in her eye as she prepares to set out up another mountain. There's not an ounce of ego in her voice nor a sense of entitlement in her demeanor. Instead, you see a woman who was just like the rest of us, seeking balance in life, making mistakes, picking herself up after tragedy, facing challenges, and laughing as she tried to figure out this thing called life. And yes, she had fear, plenty of that. But what set Chris apart was her courage in the face of fear, and her conviction that she'd found the magic in her life, which we all aspire to find, whether it's caring for animals, painting, worshiping a higher power, or being a parent. For her, it was a life in the mountains. It involved stepping into a world where she was always one of the only women, and it was more dangerous than other passions, but a passion nonetheless, and one she would never have wanted to live without, because that would have felt like not really living at all. My mother began research for a book on Chris's life not long after her ashes were returned to Appleton. She and Chris's mom, Joyce, became friends, and today they still get together for coffee and conversation about their crazy, adventurous daughters. Mom's work on the book spanned a decade until in 2017, she passed off the project and her friendship with Joyce to me. By that point, I'd become equally fascinated with Chris's story. I dove in headfirst because, like my mother, the magic in my own life had always been research, writing, storytelling. As I uncovered more details on her life, our paths looked remarkably similar. We both grew up in Appleton, went to the same high school, and played on the same tennis team. We both were exploring the mountains of Nepal for the first time in 1994. We both ended up settling in Colorado. I got married on her birthday, and she died just a few hundred miles from where my son, adopted from China, was born. It also made me smile as I became aware of our similar approaches to life. She never wanted her gender to define her accomplishments, yet she was constantly reminded of it by others. And in this, I have a story I want to share, a story that speaks to how Chris and so many other women before us have blazed trails and how we can continue to do the same. 6 months into my work on the book, I looked over my list of contacts. They were all men. I looked at the 30 mountaineering books on my bookshelf, almost all of them written by men. I laughed, thinking this was completely random. What do you mean, Joanna? They are all men, said my husband. All of them. You're writing a book about high-altitude mountaineering. Chris was all by herself 20 years ago. She was all by herself, and now, so are you. That's the whole point. I paused, momentarily amused, and then I did what Chris would have done, which is say, that's interesting. And I just kept going. That moment of moving forward, that moment was fought for, created, and given to me and to other women. That moment may have felt easy for me, but only because women before me had worked hard. They fought for the right to vote, they fought for equal pay, they fought and spoke up and advocated silently the way Chris did, so that other women and girls would have opportunity. I know I am privileged to have the ability to feel I can do anything I want regardless of my gender. I also know that there is so much more work to be done until all women and girls feel that same freedom, regardless of their social status, the color of their skin, the religion they practice, the amount of money in their bank account. There is more work to be done, and this is the work of the Women's Fund. I did eventually get to speak with a handful of important women in Chris's life. Among them was Chris's mom, Joyce Feld, who, along with my own mom, is watching today. Joyce is a bundle of energy, and the moment I met her, I understood where Chris got her drive and determination. At age 94, she's a force. Her impact on Chris's life was apparent and something I worked hard to convey in the story. The book has resonated with readers on many levels. For me, one of the most meaningful things I hear is how beautiful it is to experience a story that quietly speaks to the connection of women, all of us bound together, across generations, from mine with Chris to my mother's to Joyce Feld's. Chris survived snowstorms on high peaks, the death of loved ones, and constant scrutiny because of her gender. But in the end, she remained faithful to who she was and the women in this community who had raised her. The concept of legacy was always very present for me as I wrote Edge of the Map. I spent much time pondering how legacies are shaped by other people after we leave this earth. I also lingered over the idea of how we can find our own ways to benefit our world while we're here. It took well over a decade for Chris's story to be told, but now I know why. The story was waiting for this moment in time to bring light to the darkness, to allow me to have opportunities like today to speak about what Chris would want for the future of women and girls in our community. She'd be a brilliant environmental steward as we move forward in trying to protect our earth. She'd be a champion for racial justice, having traveled all over the world and knowing what it meant to truly see others and honor them for both the color of their skin and the goodness in their hearts. And she'd be a humble and playful warrior for the rights of women and girls in achieving what they desired by looking inward and not by conforming to standards set by others. She'd seek much, but in such a quiet way that it's possible she could have lived on for decades and not been known for her extraordinary achievements. So that, I believe, is the lesson from her story coming full circle. Chris's legacy is strong because she has words on the pages of a book and all of us here to pick up the baton. We won't all have books written about our lives, but we all have the chance to help define our own legacies. We all have the ability to serve and grow and lift up our communities. It's up to each of us to make choices about how to spend our time and money on these precious years we have on Earth. By being here today, you've taken that first step to build better futures for the women and girls of the Fox Valley so they can all go on to climb the highest mountains in the world. Thank you to the Women's Fund for your magnificent contributions to our community. In closing, I'd like to leave you with Christine's own words from an interview she did in 2006, just before she lost her life.
Where I feel the most satisfaction is watching people summit and getting emotional, or, our mind is always telling us we can't do it, and you really can. You physically, you can do this. You just have to convince your head. I have people that I know they can summit Everest, and they're just like, I can't make it, and it's just like, you can make it. So, we all kind of search around and, wonder where we're going, and I just found kind of my place. So if you really have the drive and focus to want to be the best and find that passion, you'll find it. And don't be afraid to take risks, because you're closing doors that way. So yeah, just leave the worry aside and enjoy every minute of your life. I mean, that's so important.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Such a remarkable story I'm sure many of us never even knew about before today. Thank you for ensuring Christine's legacy lives on and inspiring us to think about our own legacies. Such an important message for this time. Since we cannot offer a book signing like we would after an in-person event, Joanna will be available for an outdoor book sale and signing. That's this Saturday, September 12th, from 11 to 1 at 39 Fox Point Drive in Appleton. If you already have a copy of the book, Joanna will be happy to sign it. And if you don't, books will be available to purchase, with a portion of the proceeds going to the Women's Fund. And of course, please do wear your mask. If you're unable to attend the book signing, you can order online directly from Joanna, and she will sign one and mail it to you. I have my copy here, which I really look forward to reading. I hear it's very enjoyable and inspiring as well. I would encourage you all to read and learn more about this amazing Appleton woman. And I know Joyce, Christine's mom, is watching today. So thank you for sharing your daughter's legacy with us today and through this book. Please keep bidding on the purses in the silent auction. The auction will close tomorrow at 1 o'clock, so you have just about 24 hours to pick up those beautiful purses. And remember, you will also win the gift cards donated, that were purchased, that is, from local businesses. Maybe even that pendant necklace from Avenue Jewelers. And of course, please continue to make your donations. If you're used to writing a check and putting it in an envelope, that's just fine. Checks are still accepted. Just mail it to the Women's Fund at this address. Now seems like a great time to announce our final virtual door prize winner of that signed copy of the book, Edge of the Map. That winner is Olivia Jeske. Congratulations, Olivia. We'll contact you to get you your prize. And now we welcome back Julie, and with her now is Kim Wetzel, President of the Women's Fund Board of Directors.
So glad you have joined us today, and hope you are enjoying our first ever virtual luncheon. When we made this decision back in late March, we had no idea what we were in for and how this could even work. We didn't know what we didn't know. Well, now we know. And a huge thank you goes out to the events, co-chairs, and committee, and my colleagues, Jen and Amanda, for persevering through this process and making this an amazing event for our 20th annual Women's Fund Luncheon.
I'm Kim Wetzel, President of the Women's Fund Board of Directors. On behalf of the entire board, thank you for joining us today and for your support of the Women's Fund. So much leads up to this joy-filled day, and even more so this year. Thank you to Cheryl and Stacy for their leadership on the events committee. You really didn't know what you were getting into when you said yes to this last fall. And thank you to the Women's Fund staff, Julie Keller, Jen Peters, and Amanda Loudon. Pivot seems to be the word for 2020, and you did that with creativity, flexibility, humor, and grace. Thank you for your dedication to the women and girls in our community, and thank you to all of the Women's Fund volunteers for stepping up, especially the events committee. And to Kathy Seifert and Kathy Tierney, you have been leaders, supporters, and champions for women. Thank you for being honorary co-chairs at this anniversary luncheon. I would also like to thank all of the women out there who have been on the front lines doing the essential work that needs to be done that benefits us all. We see you, we are grateful to you, and the Women's Fund supports you. Today, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the creation of the Women's Fund. 25 years since 108 women and a few men recognized that a fund for women was necessary to achieve the goals for all women. Because of their foresight and your support, $1.7 million has been invested in women and girls in 83 organizations and 224 programs, serving thousands of women and girls, impacting hundreds of families, and benefiting our entire community. As we all know, when women thrive, our community prospers. We are harnessing our collective power to extend our impact, and that is why I personally donate my time and money to the Women's Fund, knowing that when we are all in this together, we can do more and go farther. Thank you all for joining us in this endeavor, whether you are joining us for the very first time or have been here for all 20 luncheons. We value your contribution to the advancement of women and girls, so power and opportunity are not limited by gender.
We have a lot to celebrate. Many of you have heard about our collaborative Starting Point 2.0 and Empower Her programs that lift young women and single moms out of poverty through education. I'm happy to tell you that 68 women have graduated from this program, including our largest class this spring in the middle of a pandemic. I'm also happy to tell you that we expanded this program to Wapaka, and our first class completed the program. And I'm really happy to tell you that one of the women, November, who went through the second Starting Point cohort 3 years ago, has graduated, receiving her associate's degree in human resources, and is currently employed with benefits to support her and her family. That is why we are all here, why we invest in nonprofit partners to make real change and change the lives of women and girls.
You have the opportunity to be a part of the Women's Fund story as we embark on our next 25 years. You heard earlier about the generous $25,000 match from Community First Credit Union. We are also so thrilled that one of our generous founding donors is also offering a $10,000 match. What an amazing opportunity for you to double your impact and kickstart the next 25 years. We can continue to make a difference when we stand together, when we invest in her. Today I'm asking you to continue that investment, and we can change the path for women and girls.
You can go to investinher.net to make your donation or text WF Luncheon to 76278. Your donation will be counted towards our 2 generous match opportunities. Thank you again to Kathy Tierney and everyone at Community First Credit Union. We are honored and grateful. And to our anonymous founding donor, thank you for your generosity to the Women's Fund for 25 years. The impact of the Women's Fund has never been greater or more important. The pandemic may have exposed and amplified systematic inequalities that women face, but we have the opportunity to fuel the change we want to see for future generations of women and girls.
Our goal today is to meet or even exceed our 2 match opportunities and raise $35,000 to support our mission to promote the advancement of women and girls in our community. Or there are numerous other ways to support the work of the Women's Fund. You may want to consider a stock gift, a gift from a donor-advised fund, or if you are one of the many people looking at your wills and estate plans during this time, consider a legacy gift, and your desires to invest in women and girls will live on. Just reach out to Julie, and she will be happy to talk through and help find the option that may be best for you. No matter how you give, by investing in women, you improve families, and as a result, the community thrives.
And because we are having some fun this year with drawings, all gifts over $100 will be entered into a drawing for one of our designer handbags that have been so generously donated to help us raise funds through this special virtual event. Don't worry, if you made a $100 gift when you registered, you will be entered as well. I am now so excited to share with you a video that our friends at Image Studios put together for us earlier this year, pre-COVID, for you to get a better sense of the impact you are making for women and girls right here in the Fox Valley.
The idea of a women's fund initially was the result of a study that had been done by several women to just see what the needs were in our community for women and girls. And they found that indeed there were some real challenges that were not being met. And so the idea of a women's fund began. In the beginning, the Women's Fund was formed with the idea that 100 women would each give $1,000. And that's how it started. It started chatting with each other. Would you be willing? Is this something you would think that our community needs? And as one of those first 100 women, I was surprised to learn some of the challenges that really were ahead of us.
The Women's Fund invests in women and girls through grants, advocacy, and education. And we do that to have the greatest impact so women can achieve their full potential. We focus on certain areas that will have that greatest impact, including safety, health, and well-being, education, economic security, and leadership opportunities for women and girls. Each year, we invest over $150,000 back into the community to meet the specific and unique needs of women and girls. And over our 25-year history, we have invested more than $1.6 million back into the community specifically for women and girls. That impacts thousands and thousands of lives in our community.
The Women's Fund has had a great impact on Harbor House over the years, right from the very beginning. When I first heard of the Women's Fund forming, I was really excited about it because I knew that it was just going to grow from a small group of women to what it could be today. The Women's Fund for the Fox Valley region is ever-changing, and it needs to change. It needs to be dynamic to be able to keep step with our changing world and the changing face of women, the changing needs and issues that women are dealing with. When I think of when the Women's Fund started and what the Women's Fund is today, it's a lot different, and it needs to be, and it needs to continue to keep step with the changing needs of women and girls.
My favorite thing is how we've been able to encourage and bring young women together to learn about philanthropy, to learn about supporting other women and each other. And that's so vitally important in our community.
One of the ways we determine what we want to invest in the community is through research. And through our research, we discovered that female-headed households have the highest poverty rate in our region. We decided to start a program called Starting Point, and that program helps single moms increase their education so they can get the skills necessary to get those higher paying jobs and support themselves and their family.
I have some personal things going on, and I don't think if I had the mindset that Starting Point has created for me, I don't know if I would get through it. But I'm pulling from those resources that Starting Point 2.0 has given me. And that's how I know that I'm gonna keep going and be successful.
Another important mission of the Women's Fund is how do we teach philanthropy to young women and girls? So one of the programs we have is the Girls Grant Making Program, and that is where we get a group of high school girls together and they get to decide what are the issues most impacting them and their peers.
The impact the Girls Grant Making Program had on me is that I'm really able to express my leadership. Coming from a small town, I didn't believe that I could really have an impact on the world, especially with, my gender. We're all having problems and issues, but when we can come together as a team and analyze problems that girls are going through and find a solution for them, it really helps me understand that I can actually have an impact and show off my leadership.
When I think about the Women's Fund, one word that comes to mind is impactful.
There's so much that we've been able to do and so many lives that we've been able to have an impact on because of the programs that have been funded by the Women's Fund.
In high school, I was involved in a program called SEED, and we had the opportunity to meet women in the workforce and just having a little bit more education on like what we can do in the future. We had the opportunity to meet photographers, firefighters, chefs, and even a social worker, and that's how I knew I wanted to be a social worker with her help.
So going forward, we invite more people to come and join the Women's Fund efforts because together we can have a greater impact on women and girls.
The Women's Fund for the Fox Valley region is vitally important to our community. It serves such a variety of women and girls in such a responsible way. As a donor, it's really important that you see the results and know the results of where your money goes. And that's something that the Women's Fund does every year. It's exciting to hear what they've done, and it's exciting to think about what they're going to do in the future.
Invest in her.
Invest in her.
Invest in her. Invest in her.
Invest in her.
Well, what a beautiful way to recap the Women's Fund and the important work it does in our community because of all of you. Congratulations to all that made this possible, from the more than 100 founding donors who had this idea, to all of you here today and everyone who was a part of this journey for the last 25 years. And now we want to hear from you. In the chat, put in one word that comes to mind when you think about the Women's Fund. It doesn't matter if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, there is a chat function. Just one word, that's your challenge. I thought about one though, Julie. My word would be inspire. The work of the Women's Fund inspires me, and I see how it inspires others too. So what's your word? If you're watching with multiple people, have somebody put all of the words from your group into the chat function.
Thank you for doing that for us, and thank you for your great word. Thank you to all who have donated and have already made donations. I know we can make both matching gifts and raise $35,000. Since we can't collect your donations at the luncheon today, all online gifts and all checks postmarked by tomorrow will be counted towards the 2 matches.
Hey, you know what? We have one last drawing. You want to pull up that beautiful purse right there? It's for this designer purse, and it comes as a whole package. You get this Michael Kors purse, a Sangria's gift card, a necklace from Idushi, 2 Yeti wine tumblers and the bottle of wine to fill them with, and a copy of Joanna's book, Edge of the Map. It's all valued at over $500. And everybody who donated $100 today by 12:15 was entered in this drawing. So we're doing this drawing using a randomized tool in Excel. So Julie, another high-tech, thing.
High-tech this year.
Well, Excel is worse than Zoom, so congratulations to the person running that. All right, our winner is Janelle Furman. All right, Janelle, congrats to you. We are going to contact you to arrange for you to get this great prize package. Now remember, bidding on the designer purses will continue until 1 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. Watch the Women's Fund Facebook page to see if you were one of the lucky winners. And donations for the 2 matching gift opportunities are also available until tomorrow. So please do get that check in the mail to have your gift matched and your impact doubled.
And thank you for sharing part of your day with us. And thank you all for supporting women and girls, not just today, but all year. The Women's Fund inspires us, as Lisa said, to achieve lasting change for women and girls, which results in lasting, positive change for our entire Fox Valley community.
And congratulations to the Women's Fund for an amazing 20th annual luncheon, plus 25 years of impact in the community. Here's to the next 25. All right. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.